Good day and welcome to the Maths Room. In today's video, we're going to be having a look at expanding all of these brackets. Let's get into it. The goal when expanding brackets is to remove them. So our objective here is to multiply that 3 or whatever's on the outside of the brackets with all the terms within the brackets. To show this in a test or in written form, we often use arrows or loops. This helps us visualize what we're going to be doing. So we're going to times the 3 by the 2x. So 3 times 2x is 6x. And then we're going to take 3 and multiply it by the second term, which is 3. So 3 times 3 is 9. If you're not a fan of the arrows or the loops method, you can also use the grid method, which is very similar. We just write the terms within the bracket on the top and whatever's on the outside where I've written the 3. We're then just going to follow the same procedure. We're going to say 3 multiplied by 2x, which is the same answer, which is 6x, and then the 3 times 3, which results in 9. And you can see there that our answers come out to be the same. So whichever method works for you, feel free to use. For the sake of this video, I'm going to be using the loops or the arrows method. The next levels involve multiplying brackets with not only positives, but also negatives, which you can see on the top. If you've forgotten how to do this, there's a refresher next to me. But an easy way to think of it is if you're multiplying two signs that are the same, so a positive and a negative, your result will always be a positive. But if the signs that you're multiplying together are different, the result will always be a negative. We start the same by taking whatever's on the outside of the bracket and multiplying it into my two terms. In this case, -2 means that we need to think a little bit more carefully. So I always start by just separating out the signs and doing them individually. So a negative times a positive is going to result in a negative, and then just 2 times 6 is 12, and then the x. So that results in a -12x. And then a negative times a positive is once again a negative, and 2 times 4 is 8. Right, so if we kick it up a gear, we're going to have a negative within the brackets. So -3 times 5 is a -15x, and then a -3 times a -2, remember, negative times a negative, that sign is going to be a positive. So it becomes a positive 6. And that, more often than not, is where the marks are lost. Students oftentimes and get that first term sign right, but then they forget the sign for the second term. So be very, very careful. Right, now we have a term on the outside of the brackets that has a 4 and an x and a negative. So you need to be extra careful here. So negative times a positive, we know that the first term is going to be a negative. So you can just write that down at the start. And a 4 times 3 is 12, but now it's also an x. So I'm multiplying 3x by x, and we know that x times x is x squared. And then we do the same in the second term, but now once again, negative times a negative is a positive, and it's 4 times 4, so that's 16. And don't forget about the x. The next and final category is where we have to expand and then also simplify. These look a little bit complicated, but they're actually not. It's just completing what we've just done, except doing it twice before moving on to the final step. So to help you in a test, you can cover the second section. If it looks too complicated, cover it up and just do the first part. And that is exactly the same as before. 2 times 3x, 6x. 2 times -4, -8. Now cover that section and complete the same exercise on the second. 2 times x, 2x. 2 times -3, -6. And now we have our final step. And this is the only part that's different from individual brackets. Here, we've got terms that are similar, so we can collect like terms. So if we have a look, we've got a 6x and a 2x. So we can bring those together. So 6x plus 2x is 8x, and -8 and a negative 6, we can bring those two together and we get negative 14. And just like that, fairly complicated sum is done. As before, we increase difficulty just by adding in negatives. So now you can see that there's a negative and an x in front of the first bracket and a negative in front of the second bracket. That second bracket looks a little bit weird. We'll get to it in a second. We're going to perform the expansion of the brackets the exact same way. We start by multiplying negative 3x by 2x, which results in a negative 6. Don't forget the square. And then a negative x times a negative 2, which will give us a positive 6x. Now, the second term has a negative there with no number. Don't forget in algebra, when it's written like that, we just have a imaginary or invisible 1 because we don't actually need to write the 1 in algebra. So we're multiplying in a negative 1, which makes this sum look complicated, but it's actually quite easy. So negative 1 times x being negative x. Same thing there, we don't write the 1 in front of the x. And then negative 1 times negative 1 is a positive 1. And as before, we need to collect like terms. There isn't another x squared, so I can leave that one as it is, but there are 2x terms. So I can bring those together, which results in a 5x, and then there are no more constants, so we can just write plus 1. And with that, the sum is complete. Thanks for watching. I hope it helped. If it did, add to that like button, multiply that subscribe button, and we'll see you soon for more.